you as you help others deepen their love for God and their Bible knowledge. AFA Stream is a great resource. With topics covering biblical worldview training, godly marriage, and more, you'll have access to some of the best teaching available. And if you're a Great Commission partner, you open up even more. Visit stream.afa.net today. stream.afa.net.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview. The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, July 30th, and tsunami waves are radiating across the Pacific after a major earthquake, 8.8 in magnitude. This is reportedly one of the top 10 earthquakes in history, and it struck off of Russia's coast. And so the morning from the New York Times explained what is happening. If you want to go and read about the damage, the evacuations, the science behind tsunamis that can travel more than 500 miles per hour in deep water, crossing an ocean in less than a single day. And the earthquake was one of the largest on record, according to the New York Times, tied for the sixth biggest if scientists don't revise its scale. And so we are praying for all of those who may be affected, including in Hawaii and off of the West Coast. So in Hawaii, the governor declared an emergency, and traffic filled mountain roads as people fled the sea and the coastal areas, but officials said the threat of widespread destruction had passed. So beaches are also closed in parts of California, and then up and down the West Coast, there is still concern. So meanwhile, we're still following the story of the gunman who opened fire in a Manhattan office building and had left a note in his wallet claiming that years of playing football had left him with a brain disease known as CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And it's caused, according to reports, by an accumulation of blows to the head. So cases have been linked to hockey, rugby, wrestling, soccer, and of course, football. And so when this gunman went against the NFL, which was in this office building, there was an office, though none of the four people that he killed worked there. So what's really going on with a lot of these cases, and especially there in New York City? Well, let's welcome in John Cardillo, who is a GOP strategist, for more thoughts on this. So John, good morning. You are also a former NYPD, and it seems like there are a lot of just bizarre incidents and, violence and things that happen around New York City. What is the scene like there?
Well, when a situation like that happens, and good morning, Jenna, always good to be with you, it's a pretty rapid response, right? So 911 calls would have come in. There was an active shooter. There would have been a description of the perp. There would have been, rough description of the firearm. You can see the surveillance video. He's carrying a long gun, looks like an AR with a single point sling on it. And at that point, local officers are going to be mobilized from that local Midtown precinct. That would have either been the 17th, Manhattan South or Manhattan North, that particular address. It was really in the nexus of those three. I believe, just remembering my precinct geography in New York, but really they would have rolled out ESU, the Emergency Service Unit. And you can see that in those videos, the guys in the heavier gear, the level 4 body armor, the ballistic helmets, the long guns. So that's the Emergency Services Unit. That's NYPD's SWAT. They just, for some reason, we called it ESU. Other departments called it SWAT. They're going to deploy hostage negotiators. They're going to deploy all the bells and whistles, the robot, the aviation unit's going to be, above the building in the air. And you're going to have streets blocked off, for a good eighth of a mile in either direction. And so the response was rapid, as rapid as it could be, because the shooting happened, I think, on the 33rd floor. So you're going to go up by elevator and by stairwell. You're going to go by both. So an entry team is going to use both methods to come up alongside patrol and, cops, regular patrol cops without all that heavy gear behind the ESU operators. Well, by the time they got up there, he apparently had shot himself. So I have no the response was textbook. The response by the NYPD was exactly what it should have been. And then Dan Bongino, a friend of ours, posted later on that the FBI New York field office was also there backing them up in his direction. So I think in terms of a law enforcement response, everything was done perfectly. It was textbook.
Wow. And, despite these kinds of layered protections, like the armed guards, turnstiles, safe rooms, the shooter, as you mentioned, still gained entry and then went up the wrong elevator. And so for preventing, more of these just totally senseless, violent crimes in the future, where might the vulnerabilities lie?
That's a tough one. So you and I have spoken about this before, excuse me, and I've always said the things that bother me, the ones that I'm always concerned about are these. Low-tech, asymmetrical, one bad guy. He didn't need planning. He didn't need chatter. He didn't need communications. You got to remember, these buildings employ thousands of people, or I should say the companies within these buildings employ thousands of people. So you really can't harden the entry to a degree that people are late for work 45 minutes. You can't have airport-style security with a line around the block. Business wouldn't be done. The tenants would move out. It's tough, right? And then one of the biggest tragedies of this story is that the officer killed, he was from the 4-7 precinct in the Bronx. He wasn't even normally there. He was on a detail down there that day. So it really just, that was a completely random, 1 in a billion shot of him being the cop that was there that was going to be killed by this lunatic, by this savage. That guy was just trying to make extra money. But again, very, very difficult to fortify an office building to make it impenetrable, because then people are going to be waiting 45, 50 minutes just to get up to the office. It's impractical. I think in cases like this, we always want answers, right? You got to do something. You need an answer. Sometimes bad people just do bad things, and they do them in a way that's impossible to interdict, and good people are going to be hurt or killed. And I don't know if there's really any way to ever protect against something like this with 100% efficacy.
And I'm speaking with John Cardillo, who's former NYPD and also a GOP strategist. And, speaking of that, the shooter had a concealed carry permit, apparently from Nevada, and made firearm purchases despite a mental health history, apparently. And so a lot of people are going to, red flags and warning signs that might have triggered intervention. And a lot of this conversation continues to come up. I've said, for years that I've never met a red flag law that would pass the U.S. Constitution because, as you said, unfortunately, bad people do bad things, and we want to make sure that we are not foreclosing the constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms that the Second Amendment preserves and protects from good people, right, just because some people may do bad things. So what's your view of the conversation of red flag laws now?
Well, let's back up to the crux of the point you just made, which is if New York City didn't have draconian gun laws that disarm law-abiding people, there might have been a few armed people in that building who would have stopped this guy, and people might not have been killed. People might not have been injured. So I squarely place the blame, or a good part of the blame for things like these, on both the bad guy and on places with draconian gun laws. I'll tell you one thing. If that was an office building in Miami or Fort Lauderdale, he would have encountered more than a few armed people. Down here in South Florida where I live, if that was a building in Dallas or Houston, he would have faced some armed people. And so, unless those businesses are moronic and are in gun-free zones. But so that's a big part of the problem. Let's go back to him being able to buy a gun. Right, his permit was issued by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And remember, Jenna, a background check only tells you what someone has done. It doesn't give you their mindset, their intent, what they might do down the road. And red flag laws, to me, are incredibly incredibly presumptive. Red flag laws, to me, can be abused very, very easily. They are punitive to the point of being able to be weaponized. So all it takes is an ex-wife who's upset she's not getting enough child support. The judge ruled against her to red flag her ex-husband, and in a lot of jurisdictions, or an ex-husband to his ex-wife. And in a lot of jurisdictions, there's not going to be due process. Their guns are going to be seized. They're going to have that scarlet letter on their chest, and it's going to be a bear and thousands upon thousands of dollars in legal fees to get those guns back. So I despise red flag laws. I wish our, spineless Florida legislature would follow the governor's lead and repeal the red flag laws that were instituted in Florida after Parkland, because they've done nothing to stop anybody. And no, I'm not a fan of red flag laws at all. And we don't even know if this guy had been reported properly for erratic behavior, if they would have even stopped him.
Right. Yeah. And that's such a good question, because now after the fact, we can always go back and say, oh, well, this should have been known. And of course, those who are in favor of red flag laws would say this would have been mitigated if these types of protections or laws had been in place. But really, this is a pre-crime sort of process when you have a predictive model of what someone might do, and obviously punishment after the fact is part of due process. We never punish someone for a crime they may or may not ever commit, and that's a huge problem with red flag laws. Let's also talk about permit reciprocity, because this is something that Congressman Thomas Massey and of course other conservatives, but him I think most prominently recently has been pushing. That concealed carry permits, you shouldn't even need that. That's part of our right to keep and bear arms. And if more people did, especially somewhere like New York City, then some of these things may be mitigated even earlier. I mean, you see the example of like what happened in Texas, where the individual who had a gun was able to mitigate that situation very quickly, just because when good people have firearms, they can stop the bad people. And that's better ultimately. And so should concealed carry permits even be required constitutionally, but should they be honored from one state to another rather than, a lot of these, in my opinion, unconstitutional types of frameworks where even if you're carrying a gun and you're perfectly happy to, and lawful, like here in the state of Florida, but you travel to New York, then you can't.
Yeah, no, it's silly, right? So to both of your questions, we should have constitutional carry nationwide. Permits should not be allowed. They're an impediment to the Second Amendment. Ron DeSantis and other conservative governors who signed constitutional carry bills, permitless carry bills, and a law have said so. And reciprocity, yes. I mean, for the states that require it, reciprocity, firearms licenses should be treated like driver's licenses. In fact, more so. You don't have a constitutional right to drive. You have a constitutional right to keep and bear arms. But the dirty little secret of the NYPD that no one ever wants to talk about, but I'll tell you, because I'm disgusted by what an agency I loved and was very proud to work for has become, is that the people who ran the pistol license, New York City has a pistol license division and a rifle permit division, and easier to get a rifle permit. That's pretty much a gimme. But the pistol licenses are nearly impossible, except for premise, to keep it in your home or business. And what I had two former commanding officers of that unit who were actually pro-Second Amendment guys and did what they could to get people approved, both said to me, the entire system here historically has been designed to deny permits. They said this office doesn't exist to approve them. This office exists to look for the comma or period in the wrong place, deny you, set you back another 6 months, and then do it again and again and again. They make it incredibly difficult, incredibly cost prohibitive. You have to go down to police headquarters in Manhattan where parking is $70, $80 now with each firearm you buy to show it to them so they can prove the one that they approved is the one in the box. They put every imaginable obstacle in the way in New York City to anyone being able to legally own a handgun. It is reprehensible, and I don't think the courts have gone far enough spanking New York City down on this. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah, and well said. And the government shouldn't be standing in the way purposefully of people exercising their constitutionally protected rights. And in fact, that contravenes the legitimate purpose of government, which is to protect and encourage, in fact, people to exercise their rights and ensure that that we are able to do that in a well-ordered society. So I agree with you, John Cardillo, that the courts have not gone far enough to protect those rights. And when the situations like this happen, we have to make sure to keep the principled view in focus, and recognize that unfortunately bad things are going to happen, but that doesn't mean then that you foreclose the rights of the rest of the citizens, instead of simply punishing evildoers, which is another legitimate purpose of government. So thanks so much, John. You can follow John Cardillo on X at John Cardillo. We'll be right back with more.
Hello, everybody. I'm Walker Wildman, Vice President here at American Family Association. Well, my brother Wesley and I were following in the footsteps of my dad, our dad, and my grandfather Don Wildman by leading tours to places of the Bible. And so this next March, we're going to be going to Greece and following the footsteps of Paul. So we're so very excited about this trip, and we'll hope you'll join us. Here's a couple of the places that we're going to visit. We're going to visit Philippi, Thessalonica, Corinth, and all the various Greek cities that you read about in the book of Acts and Paul's epistles. And so you can find the dates, locations, pricing, and much more over at wildmangroup.com. You can also find out more about my dad's trip and my mom over to Israel. They're going to be in Israel in March as well. These trips are back-to-back, and you can do both if you would like. All the information about Footsteps of Paul, Greece, Israel, all of these trips in March of 2026, just visit wildmangroup.com.
Hey, I'm Brant, and her name is Sherry.
Hello.
She's a friend of mine whom we were just praying for because of a surgery she just went through.
Yes, and I am very happy about something you actually talk about all the time, which is
Medishare.
That is right.
Yeah. So what was your experience like with Medishare and the healthcare bills?
Honestly, Brant, seamless. And what a blessing that is when you're already nervous about a health issue, which I was.
Yeah.
Members shared my expenses. There were zero problems. And let me tell you, having people pray with you when you call in with your need, that is just...
It is refreshing.
Yes, that's what it is.
What I keep telling people, people love Medishare, and they love saving tons of money, too. The typical family can save $500 a month.
I am very thankful for Medishare. It is so different, and I mean different in a very, very good way.
It is good different. Call now. They're easy to talk to, and you can get a price within 2 minutes. Call 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE, 833-44-BIBLE.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Stern. Stand by for news and commentary next. Amy Sherald is a woke artist who became famous for depicting the Statue of Liberty as black and transgender. She also created a rendition of the famous World War II Times Square kiss featuring two gay black men. And Sherald earned national acclaim for painting the official portrait of former First Lady Michelle Obama. Now comes word that Sherald is canceling her upcoming show at the Smithsonian. The National Portrait Gallery alerted the artist they might remove her painting of transgender Lady Liberty over fears might anger President Trump. Sherald accused the Smithsonian of censorship and pulled out of the exhibit. Now, the White House said pulling the transgender exhibit is a step towards restoring sanity in the taxpayer-funded art world. They said the painting all but desecrated one of our most sacred symbols. And Lady Liberty is meant to inspire national unity, not pronoun confusion. I'm Todd Starnes.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And late last week, French President Macron announced that France would officially recognize Palestine as a state, thereby endorsing the violence of Hamas and their cruel methods for political gain, according to Representative Marlon Stutzman, who posted that on X and said, as Americans, we cannot legitimize the violence used by terrorist organizations. And so Representative Marlon Stutzman joins me now, and I couldn't agree more with this. This seems just a little bit bizarre that that France would go that far as to recognize Palestine as a state. What's going on there, and where should the United States and specifically Congress be with respect to this?
Yeah, well, great to be with you this morning, Jenna. Thanks for having me. You know, what's happening, I think, in Europe, frankly, is just the pressure from the the Islamic governments from around that region into the European leadership. And I don't know if they've been to Gaza and Israel. Hopefully they have. But the problem isn't recognizing a Palestinian state. They're even divided amongst themselves within Israel around the Gaza Strip, over along the West Bank, not Samaria and Judea, but along the West Bank, which is something too that we as Americans need to recognize, that the West Bank is a much larger area that they want us to believe is Palestinian land, but it's really Judea and Samaria that belongs to Israel. And so now France has decided they're going to recognize Palestine as a state. And it's like, well, what are you recognizing? Because there's several issues that have to be first addressed, and that's the situation in Gaza, which is it's a horrible situation. Hamas has put so many people in Gaza. First of all, they killed Israelis on October 7th, 2023, and then they hide behind the Gazan people in Gaza with their terrorist organization, holding hostages, no regard for the people in Gaza, starving them. And we, the Israelis and the American government and others, have been taking over the humanitarian aid that's been going into Gaza. But again, Hamas, they're a terrorist organization. So I guess we're going to recognize Palestine with their under Hamas control as a state. So we're going to recognize a terrorist organization as their leadership, I guess. It's insane to me. And so, we've got strong leadership with President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. We need the Middle East to come together as a region and fix this problem once and for all, and start rooting out these terrorist organizations and say they have to be eliminated and they have to be isolated.
And so how might France's move affect the ongoing U.S. engagement in the Israel-Palestine peace process and our relationship with France?
Well, I think, President Trump, already has some thoughts about Macron in France, because it's just weak leadership. Again, they're just constantly pandering. And, Macron has come out of these other summits trying to speak for President Trump, one way or the other. It's not, he acts on one hand like he's on the same page with President Trump, but then he's really not. France has always been known, to pander, and I think that that's just what's happening here. I was in Israel a couple of months ago, and they were concerned about this even then, that France would do this. I just think that the pressure is on in not only France but also Great Britain. You look at the cities and how many Islamic mayors there are, Muslim mayors that have been elected in Great Britain. This is no longer. I mean, this is a very different country than what we think of when we think of Great Britain, and I think they need to recognize that. If they're going to elect Muslim leadership, they need to make sure they elect Muslim leadership that is not going to support terrorism, that is not going to support any sort of jihad. But those countries are changing rapidly because of the immigration policies in Europe. And finally, I think Germany's finally woken up to that a little bit, but it may be too late in some cases.
Yeah, and I think Representative Marlon Stutzman, my special guest this morning, I think the same could be said about electing any Democrat leadership here in America to make sure that they're also not supporting, those positions as well. I mean, in some ways, the Democrats that have been supportive of anti-Semitic, pro-Palestine nonsense, that's been just as dangerous, here in America. So are you considering any legislative proposals in response, such as resolutions, sanctions, or funding adjustments or anything like that in response to Macron?
Well, actually, we're going to be going to Israel here next week, a group of us, members of Congress, and trying to sort out some of these pieces and understanding a little better what we can do. Of course, we as America have always stood with Israel. That support is more challenged today than it ever has been, sadly. But Israel is the democracy in the Middle East. Israel is the nation that recognizes all sorts of ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds. I mean, even in the Knesset, you have Arabs who are elected by the Israeli people inside the country of Israel who are calling for Israel to be eliminated. And so that's the type of free voices they have in the Knesset in Israel. Go to any other nation and see if that happens in the Middle East. It just doesn't. And so we're going to try to find out exactly what's going on in Gaza. There seems to be, here's the problem too, Jenna. They will lie, cheat, steal, do whatever as far as the Hamas leadership. So it's hard to know what is actually going on the ground. I've talked to soldiers over there who have been in Gaza, and they feel bad for the people there because they're being used as human shields. They have their food taken away. Any humanitarian aid is stolen by Hamas, and then they'll go steal it for their military operations, for their terrorist organizations. And so it's a real mess. And we need to figure out how to get the other countries around the region, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, to help start giving aid and letting the Palestinian people in Gaza be freed from the Gaza Strip, because right now they're not being allowed to leave, but they should be allowed to go to other countries and relocate if they choose. At the end of the day, here's what I believe, Jenna, is that the Gaza Strip needs to be under Israeli control. That we have seen over and over, history has shown us that some sort of terrorist organization is going to use the Gaza Strip as a place to attack Israel, which they just did, of course, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, really well said. Congressman Marlin Stutzman from the great state of Indiana. You can follow him on X, Instagram, Facebook, all of the social media at Rep. Stutzman. And turning to another story that Breitbart covered and you also posted on your social media, the headline there is exclusive. Representative Marlin Stutzman's MAHA bill requires food label for Bill Gates funded product. You posted that applying chemical concoctions to fruits and vegetables without telling American consumers is unacceptable. The bill would ensure that information needed to make an informed decision about the food we eat is available. This seems just common sense.
Yeah, you would think so. And again, you think that our government agencies are looking out for the best, for us as citizens and what we eat. I come from a farm family. My mom and dad always taught us we are what we eat, and we got to eat green beans and carrots and tomatoes right out of the garden growing up, and of course fresh milk, fresh meats and vegetables, and that's one of the big problems we have in our country is our healthcare costs, and a lot of it comes from obesity, which is I believe rooted in the food processing system in this country. And here we have this product that is it's been funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and again, it may be fine, but why would the USDA find a loophole for this particular product to be sprayed on our fruits and vegetables as a coating? Or actually, it's a coating, but they were able to get it approved as a fungicide. And so that's what my bill does, is that it just requires them to put a label on it. That way we as consumers know exactly what product or what chemical is in this coating, because at the end of the day, the tomato is going to be healthy, but it's the chemicals that are put on our fruits and vegetables and our foods, for that matter, that can be very dangerous for us. And so this when I heard a little bit about this from some constituents and concerned citizens, it just right away threw a red flag up for me. It's like, here the farmer works so hard to produce healthy food for our country, and then at the end, they trying to get more shelf life, which I understand. We all want to get better shelf life for our foods, but if you're going to be spraying it with dangerous chemicals, we need to be aware of it, and it needs to be stopped if it's dangerous for us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is why the Make America Healthy Again movement is so popular, and it should be across the aisle, because health isn't a partisan, or it shouldn't be a political topic. And I've seen so many Instagram posts lately where people are revealing the differences between what products used to contain back, 15, 60 years ago versus what they contain now. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is right that we're not eating the same things. I mean, when people say, oh, well, I ate that as a kid and I'm fine. It's really not the same product when you look at even bread, for example, and the rise of meat. Listeners know I eat gluten-free because there are so many processed, bleached additives and all of that. It's not the same as if you go, for example, to Europe, where it's just flour, water, sugar, yeast. I mean, just a couple of ingredients and not all of these additives. And I think we might have lost the representative there, Devin. And so we'll try to get him. Okay. Well, we'll try to get him back. So, I'm sure that he wants to continue to talk about this. But as I was saying, it's so different, the food that we consume here versus what Europe has, and also what we used to have back in the 50s and 60s, even in the grocery store. So it's not actually the same product. And it's amazing to me when I've traveled, all over. I've been to about 27 different countries now. And it's amazing to me that when I travel over in Europe, for example, that does have, this is the one area we can talk about, a lot of other things that they're not great on, but this is the one area where their food supply is different. And I can eat a lot, bread, pasta, all of this over there, and it doesn't cause, the same kinds of just physical consequences. And so I'm told that we have Representative Marlin Stutzman back, and so sir, we were, talking about the whole Make America Healthy Again movement, and I would love to see the entire food industry, the FDA, and our entire food supply, just the change that, yes, we want to have a longer shelf life, but we don't want to cause all of these health problems to people, because ultimately, that's difficult in a different way in terms of the cost to our healthcare system, to our families, and to the country overall.
Yeah, no, and I really do believe a lot of our health care issues stem from the foods that we eat here in the United States, and that's why this product, it's called Edapeel. It's made by a company called Appeal, and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it may be fine, Jenna, but when you don't disclose, and I think that's the big concern that many of us as Americans have right now with our government, is that we just don't trust them. And we don't, especially after Bill Gates made some of his remarks during COVID and after COVID and talked about population control and some other things. It's just, you need to be transparent. And this is an important product that, we need to know what's actually in the coating. And the fact that the USDA, to me, had to find a loophole to get the approval done by claiming it's a fungicide rather than a coating is really bothersome. And so that's why I felt like it deserved, congressional action and awareness for the American people, because, we're very sophisticated in the United States with the ability to not only feed ourselves, but feed other greater parts of the world. The farmer in America is the most productive, most efficient, most conservative farmer in the world as well, and is very productive. But getting shelf life at the cost of our health it's not acceptable. And here we've come so far, and I always tell our colleagues in Congress and others that the American farmer we've accomplished quantity. Now we need to accomplish quality in our foods. Going through the processing systems, that's where it really matters, because that's where additional additives can be added. And we don't want these compounds that we don't know exactly what's in them to be part of our food system.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you would think that everyone would be on board with this, maybe other than some of the lobbyists that have some of these incentives, or, people like Bill Gates that are, running all of these different experiments, and who knows what some of those motivations are. But where is this bill in terms of where it's at in Congress, and how can people listening who like this issue potentially help?
Yeah, we just filed it the last week, and so it'll be assigned to a committee. My guess is it'll probably go to either Energy and Commerce Committee or Ag Committee. It may even go to both since it crosses jurisdiction, but we'll get that assigned to a committee, and then I'm going to be pushing for hearings with the chairman here in September once we get back to Congress and back in session September 2nd. And I think anybody that's listening, if they want to just let their member of Congress know that the Appeal Reveal Act is the name of the bill, and that we would love to have a hearing on it to hold these agencies in government accountable for the foods that we eat.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all of the great work that you do on Capitol Hill. Representative Marlin Stutzman, you can follow him on social media at Rep. Stutzman, and we will be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Every weekday, strengthen your family and your faith with Family Talk.
I had the same brain when I was at the bottom of the class that I had at the top of the class. Exactly the same brain, but a different attitude. What does that tell us about our responsibility to develop the intellect of the people in our spheres of influence?
Don't miss Family Talk with Dr. James Dobson every weekday at 6:30 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. Central on AFR. We see and hear about the big public issues happening in our nation's capital, but what about the things that happen behind the scenes? That information can give us the whole story and help shape our opinions. That's why you need to listen to Washington Watch Weekend with Tony Perkins. He and his guests will give you all parts of the Washington news from a conservative Christian perspective. Catch Washington Watch Weekend Saturdays at 5:05 a.m. and 6 p.m. Central, and Sunday mornings at 3 Central on AFR.
Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. 40 days of twice daily taunting from Goliath sent Saul and the Israelite army reeling in fear. But David's passion for Yahweh, conviction, and full persuasion stirred King Saul. When people are on fire for God, it often provokes others to glob on to that fire. But we must be careful to resist the well-meaning overtures of the flameless bystanders. Saul meant well, but his armor couldn't help. It would only slow David down.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
Hi, my name's Neil. I have some advice for you if you've been trying to break free from credit card debt. You can start by doing what I did. Get your bills together and call Trinity Debt Management. Trinity is dedicated to helping people like me become debt-free. When I called, my first experience was a feeling of relief. My counselor was kind, and best of all, she didn't judge me. In just a few minutes, she helped me figure out a plan that consolidated all my bills into one lower monthly payment. This substantially reduced my high interest rates and put me on the road to success. In the end, I saved thousands in interest, and today, my credit card debt is a thing of the past.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Neil. Take it from someone who's been there. Call Trinity and become debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, President Trump's trade deal with the European Union is making headlines, and according to USA Today, they're asking the question what it means for your wallet. Tariffs, including the new 15% rate for most imports from the EU, would raise consumer prices by 1.8% in the short run, according to the Yale Budget Lab. And so shoppers could see higher prices. The new tariff could increase prices on goods such as cars, furniture, and pharmaceuticals. And the tariffs are expected to raise prices by 1.8 in the short term. But we will see as far as what happens with the economy, the stock market, and so forth. So for more on this, let's welcome in Kevin Freeman, who is the host of Pirate Money here on American Family Radio Network. And Kevin, can you break down what this US-EU trade deal actually does in plain English?
Hey, Jenna, good morning. What it does is it brings a level playing field. We've had an unlevel playing field since World War II, which was on purpose at first because we had literally seen the devastation of most of Europe, and their economies were not prepared, and our economy was very strong. At one point, we had, 50% of the world's output came from America, and Europe was on its back. So we gave them very unfair trade deals against us, fair to them, unfair to us, very favorable to them. And President Trump is now bringing those back into line. It's been 70 years. It's time, actually 80 years since the end of World War II. It's time that we level that playing field for American workers and American goods.
Yeah. And so why was this deal necessary now? And what were the motivating factors on both sides, but particularly for the United States?
Well, for us, we'd financialized our economy. Americans stopped manufacturing things, and we were importing many items from Asia, from Europe, and et cetera. And President Trump wanted to stop that decline in American production and manufacturing. He wanted to return America, make America great again, so to speak. And these other nations, it's to their benefit to get them off of this subsidized program. You have to wean yourselves off of excessive support and get them as strong as countries again. NATO in particular, with the war, with Putin's invasion of the Ukraine and so forth, NATO wasn't manufacturing anything. They were just living off of the largesse of America in some ways, especially in the defense area, where their defense spending, they were only paying a third, or actually less than a third, about 30% of their own defense. We were paying 70%. So all of this is good for the West. President Trump says, all right, we've gone long enough on these subsidies and programs. We can't head further into socialism. We have to straighten up. And I think the timing was good. It will be a one-time potential price hike on American goods that are imported, but that'll benefit American manufacturing. I mean, if the foreign product becomes suddenly just a little bit more expensive, doesn't that make it more likely that you would buy the American version or make it a little easier for Americans to enter that marketplace? So we might have a one-time inflation impact, but it'd be a small one relative, compared to what happened under the Inflation Reduction Act, where we saw inflation jump 20% plus. To have a 1.5% upward revision in prices in exchange for getting a level playing field, in exchange for giving Americans equal opportunity, I think that's not a bad trade-off. And in fact, I think in many cases, the Europeans or the Asians, manufacturers, might absorb some of that cost increase, or the companies themselves might absorb it. So in the end, I think American consumers will benefit, not be harmed by this.
And that all is a great perspective that I think, obviously not a lot of mainstream media is covering because they never cover anything Trump related favorably. But does that mean with the one-time increase and potentially, the short-term inflation and all of that, is this going to be a tough sell for Trump?
No, actually, he's winning on this. Even the New York Times wrote an interesting piece that says Trump is winning the trade war. And Bill Maher said the same thing. He said, we were told that everything was going to end, that the world would change, and we'd go into a depression if we enacted these trade policies. It's not been true. In fact, we're growing our way through it. The growth component of the One Big Beautiful Bill and the Trade Act is so profound that we may not even notice that something that we import, cheese that you import from some other country really goes up slightly in price. You won't even notice it compared to the opportunity and the growth that we have. It really is a necessary thing. President Trump was on target doing it, and even the New York Times and Bill Maher are admitting that it's working.
Wow, that's pretty shocking for the New York Times. Maybe not so much with Bill Maher. He's been a little bit, pulled to the right, I think, as he's seeing just some of, this common sense. What about the economy overall and inflation? I mean, I was I love microwave kettle corn. It's just like the best. And I was in the store last night and buying one of those 6-packs of the microwave kettle corn, and it was $7. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, I remember when this was like $4. It seems like not that long ago. So, even on just things that we buy regularly, we're still seeing some of those higher prices. What is going on in the short and the long-term view of where we're at with inflation, grocery prices, and the economy overall? And Todd in the background, my little dog, is wondering that as well. He chimed in.
Well, inflation is, over the long run, always a monetary phenomenon. It's about how much money that you print or create versus the amount of goods and services that you create. Tariffs have an inflationary component. They also have a deflationary component if they increase American production of things. If we produce more, supply side, as President Reagan used. And then the next thing you have to do is you have to rein in your money supply. And that is something that the Biden administration and previous administrations have massive increases in money creation, mostly coming out of COVID and so forth. That should slow down. When that happens, we will see a combination of growth of manufacturing. And if we produce less money, and hand out less money, which is what the Biden administration gave out so much, we should see a tempering of any inflation. We may be at a higher price level, but it should not continue on at that rate. I mean, I'm with you, Jenna. When I went to take my family out, 4 of us, for hamburgers, and it came out to be almost $80 for hamburger, fries, and a drink at a decent restaurant, you wonder when is this going to stop? It will stop if we get back to growth, and that's the key for America, is to get back to growth. We'll have a price adjustment one time. The tariffs are not going to be long-term inflation, and hopefully we will have enough income in our pockets that we can afford the higher prices that we've seen. And if we get a solid monetary policy like I've promoted with my transactional gold and silver, which is passed in 5 states, we have the potential to actually have growth without inflation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are wondering how this is going to impact them in the long term, and these are questions that really hit home. I mean, people vote based on their wallet, how things are going, and we can talk about some of the more esoteric policies and some of these things that are questions that drive people's political views. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the midterms, how big of a topic do you think, or a voting issue, do you think that the economy will be, and do we need to get there a little bit faster in terms of President Trump maintaining those favorabilities?
Well, absolutely. We've got to get there as fast as we possibly can for the Trump administration, because the reality of it is people do vote their wallets and their pocketbooks. They expected a positive economic change. They've gotten it so far. We really have, but we forget quickly. That's why administrations rush in the first 6 months to put in all of the proposals that they have in the first term, so that when the midterms roll around, you start to see some of the positive effects, and people realize that, wow, he did not ruin the economy. He did not get us into World War III. He did not do all the things that we were warned about. And then you have to do a very good job of selling the American people that we need to continue those policies, because people forget easily. And then they go back and say, well, all right, it's time to change again. No, we should not be changing off this course. We're on the right course right now. We need to stay the course and restore America to liberty-loving, freedom-loving, low regulation, low taxes growth.
And I'm speaking with Kevin Freeman, who is the host of Pirate Money right here on the American Family Radio Network. You can go and listen to all of those episodes at afr.net. And do you think that Americans are still with President Trump and trusting that inflation will go down, and does he have the political capital that people are still with him in terms of the economy, especially when, we didn't really see a whole lot with the One Big Beautiful Bill in terms of what's been promised, at least in my opinion, with, tax breaks and some of that overall?
Well, we've maintained the tax cuts. If we hadn't passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, everybody's taxes would have gone up. And instead, we got a reduction, no tax on tips, a reduction for seniors and so forth. These are all positive. But if we had not passed it, his old tax cuts would have expired, and people would have felt that. It would have been extraordinarily painful. It's harder to sell that as a political idea. Hey, I kept your taxes from going up, as it would have been if everybody got a check in the mail or something like that. But I do think that people are basically still with him. The Democrats poll very poorly on the economy. They would have to do quite a good sales job to help the Americans forget what they did to us and what that inflation was under President Biden and how difficult and challenging it became for us. So I think he's in a decent shape. There's some international issues that he has to face. I mean, there's this whole issue with Israel in regard to Israel, particularly the war in Ukraine, particularly. But I think overall that they remain and stay with President Trump. Also, the Epstein issue is another thing that people are concerned about. But he certainly looks better than the competition that we've seen so far.
And all of that makes sense. And so, the average individual, even if we're not, economically sophisticated in terms of the analysis, like someone, like you would have, we can see the impact to our own bank accounts and all of that. And those are some indications. But what economic indicators otherwise should the average person be watching right now? Unemployment, GDP, consumer spending. I mean, all of those things may seem to be confusing headlines for the average person. But how can we kind of follow along, and what indicators should we be looking for?
Well, really, the critical indicator would be the inflation rate that we'll get. And the inflation rate's underreported by government, but it's still a decent number that you can follow. And then the mood of the country. It means more than just consumer sentiment, and things like that mean more than just about anything else. We have a transition. We've got to return back to a producer-based economy, a supply-side approach. In the long run, that will keep inflation down because we'll be producing more goods and hopefully not just creating money out of thin air. Those are the things I would watch for. What's the inflation rate doing? What's the consumer feeling, the sentiment of the consumer, and what's the mood of the country? Right now, they're on President Trump's side, but they shift fairly easily. The perceptions can shift. But when you win over Bill Maher and the New York Times, I think you've accomplished something.
Yeah, and in looking at all of this and seeing, where President Trump is going with his attempts to revive the economy, and this was a huge voting issue in 2024. Do you think, Kevin, that we'll ever get back to the economy that we had right prior to COVID? Because, that was something where, but for that whole situation happening, I remember when I was part of the campaign at that point in time, everybody was saying that the economy was so great that this was going to be the number one thing that Trump would run on, and everybody, even Democrats, whether they would admit it or not, were actually happy. Do you think that we can get back to that type of economy in even just, the next year or so, but even at all eventually under Trump?
Well, if we reduce regulations, as he's been doing, that will spark innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship. It will strengthen and return the economy. I absolutely believe that. Can we do it before the midterms? I'm not sure. I hope so. But we will always see a higher level of prices not continuing to grow. But if you remember, when I was a kid, you could get a cheeseburger for a dime or a quarter. And that wasn't true 5 years ago. Well, 5 years ago, it was much cheaper to get a cheeseburger than it is today. So we'll see that permanently higher price level, unfortunately. But in terms of the growth and the ability to afford it, and the ability, because the minimum wage was $1.60, I guess, when I was a kid, and now it's much higher than that. So I do think that we will get through this. People will have pocketbook gains, and they'll feel them. The stock market's doing well. But we may never see the $4 cheeseburger again. It may always be $8, or the cost of your favorite popcorn may be higher. But we won't see the continuing price increases. Those will stop and level out.
Well, that makes sense. And, Todd and Copper are very concerned about their favorite treats as well. So appreciate your analysis. Kevin Freeman, he's the host of Pirate Money right here on American Family Radio Network. And as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
How do you choose to stay informed? Sure, you can find all kinds of sources for information and commentary, but when you want them from a Christian perspective, turn to The Stand. Whether you choose to read the online blog or get the print version delivered to your mailbox, you can rest assured you'll receive factual news and biblically sound commentary. Find out more today at afa.net/thestand.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported